Hey everybody, Rob with WePayOffDebt.ca coming at you to talk a bit about budgeting, but very, very specific about the question, is a budget restrictive? Now before I do that, I want to encourage you, go ahead and shoot me a text. I would love to hear from you, 204-8136-133. Shoot me a text. It's a community platform where I can respond to you. Please do. I would love to hear about where you're at. Love to hear about what your struggles are. And if you have any content ideas, would love to hear it. So go ahead, shoot me a text. Just say hey, and it's completely free to join. 204-8136-133. Of course, standard text rates apply and all that. So with that said, let's get into it. So the question that comes up quite a bit is people talking about how, Rob, I don't want to make a budget because it feels so restrictive. It feels like I can't do the things I want to do. And I get that feeling. I totally get that feeling. I've been there where I felt like, I wanted to do X, Y, and Z, but I couldn't because of the budget, because I was paying off debt or whatever my priorities were at the time. But I wanted to reframe that a little bit, and this is something I heard Rachel Cruz say. Rachel Cruz is Dave Ramsey's daughter, and she now does some of this coaching on her own. She got her own channel and things like this. And one of the things she said was that a budget, you can view it as a restriction, but you can also view it as permission to spend. And so if you turn your perspective a little bit on it, what it becomes is you can now say, you know what? Everything that's in my budget, I can not only go ahead and spend it, I can feel great about spending. Like great as in guilt-free spend it. And I know for some of you, and for some of us, me, my wife and I, that's weird. Because for many, many years, we just constantly felt like we weren't doing what we needed to do with our money. We weren't living the way we needed to live financially. And so everything we do would be soaked with guilt. It would constantly feel like, you know what, I shouldn't be eating out right now because we've got no plan to put money into our kids' college fund. I shouldn't be going on this trip, this one little vacation that we're already scrimping and trying to save as much as possible because, what's our retirement plan? I don't know what's going on with that. Don't want to think about it. Let's move on. And there's this gnawing guilt in the background. The greatest thing about a budget is that you can put money where you want to put it and then feel great about doing it. You get to choose. You actually get to choose where every single penny in your budget goes. So one thing this came down to for us was while we were getting out of debt, of course, we were choosing to put extra money and all the money we could find onto the debt. Once that was paid off and we built up our emergency fund, one of the things we did that summer was our window coverings, our blinds. So we bought a house back in 2008. And it was very, very new. It was only a couple of years old house here in Winnipeg, and it was too expensive for us. We were the dollar amount that we ended up at, where the payments were very, very high, and we shouldn't have bought it in that sense. But over those 8 years of having it, we had these window coverings, which were literally paper. Now, I don't know if you've seen these things. You go to Home Depot and you buy them for literally $5, and they're paper with a sticky side, a side of tape on it, where you tape it to the inside of the window frame. And then you just let it fall. And of course, if it's too wide, you literally grab some scissors and cut it to get it to be the right size. Very, very cheap, $5 each. And we had these when we moved in, and what happened was the sun came through our beautiful, nice big windows. The sun would come through at certain times, and it would eventually start to dry out the tape. And so randomly, we would come down months or years even later and just find the blind, the paper blind it was, on the floor. Then, of course, we had kids, and now we have kids running around, and they're super easy to tear. So, my first boy, Jacob, he would be walking along, and he would just recently, as he's learning how to walk, he would grab at the window, which had the paper covering on it. He'd grab it, and of course, it's paper, so rip, right? And it wasn't even that huge a deal because, well, they're $5. But it always was frustrating because it's like, when are we going to have money to deal with this? When are we going to have money to actually get real blinds And we never did. We always felt too broke to be able to get blinds. So now, fast forward, we get out of debt, we build our emergency fund. It's one of the first things we did. Wouldn't you know it? In fact, in that first month, we were able to put $500 into new blinds. And it was so weird because for years we had been unable to do this, and it felt like this massive, massive thing. And it ended up $500 did everything. $500 took care of everything that we needed to do, and it was awesome. It was amazing, and it felt so good to actually have that done. And we had no problem because we had put it in the budget. We had no problem spending it. It was there. It was budgeted for. That money was taken care of. We can spend that money on this and feel great about it, and we did. So in the same way, when you're making a budget, you can view it as a restriction, but that's going to be defeating because you're not going to want to keep doing it. You're in charge. You're in charge. So you get to choose what goes in your budget. And specifically, you can put in your budget anything you want, and once it's in the budget, you can feel great about it being there because you know you've budgeted and you've consciously chosen, this is where I want my money to go. Even if that's eating out, even if that's a restaurant, what have you. Now, if you're in debt, I would encourage you to be more intentional and focus as much as you can on the debt. But if you decide, you know what, this thing is super important to us, we're going to do that. So we did that in our get out of debt journey. One thing that was really important to us was eating out, but not specifically eating out with other people. And so we were really scared as we were getting started. I'm like, how can we cut back our food budget when that's how we get fellowship with people? That's how we get time with people, as we go to Tim Hortons or we go to restaurants or we go to what have you and get time together. And so what we decided to do was right from the beginning of our budget, we put a line called fun and fellowship. And what this looked like for us was a chunk of money that we could only spend, usually on food, mostly on food, with other people. Okay? It had to involve other people. We were not allowed to spend this when it was just ourselves. A whole separate line item that we would agree what comes out of there or what situations have to be like to fit in there. They have to involve other people, and they usually involve maybe one-on-one me with somebody else, or one-on-one my wife with somebody else, or a double date, for instance. These things would go in there, and it was amazing. It was a great way we chose to consciously spend our money, and what it let us do was do it guilt-free, because then everything else went to the debt. That was our thing. So for instance, if something came up, like my shoes at one point got a hole in them, I glued the hole shut because I didn't have any money. We had fun and fellowship money, but we did not have any other money to go towards clothes or new purses or new whatever, right? Everything else was just bare minimum. Duct tape the car, keep it going, right? Whatever it took, because everything else had to go to the debt. That one thing, that was our thing. We're saying, this is what's so important. We're going to choose to put it in the budget, choose to feel completely guilt-free about it, because, and so that everything else can throw at the debt. Okay? So a budget is permission to spend. So I want to encourage you with that as you're deciding to make your budget, as you're deciding to work on your budget. Definitely keep that in mind, that you're choosing what goes in there. You and your spouse together, if you're married, you and your spouse are choosing what goes in there, and once it's in there, it gives you permission to spend that. So I hope that brings you some value today. Have a good one. We'll talk to you again soon.